gentlemen, please stand for the national anthem. June. Today's theme is productivity in a digitized world, with the panel discussion focusing on the topic, harmonizing technology, innovation, and people for game-changing results. Would like to acknowledge, both in absentia and in person, the following individuals. The Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister, the Honorable Carl Samuda, Minister of Labor and Social Security, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Colette Roberts Risden, Mr. Anthony Hyde, the Chairman of the Board of the Jamaica Productivity Center, members of the Jamaica Productivity Center Advisory Board, Mrs. Tamar Nelson, Chief Technical Director of the Jamaica Productivity Center. We acknowledge as well our panelists, Mrs. Therese Turner-Jones, Mr. Stephen Price, Mrs. Tamara Nelson, Ms. Gillian Corodas, Mr. Tyrone Wilson, and Mr. Reese Campbell, who chairs the panel, guests and viewers online, locally, and around the world. Productivity is the key to sustainable growth of our economy, achieving an improved standard of living and facilitating competitive industries. With a productivity-focused approach, it then becomes how efficiently we use our resources. In other words, it is the rate at which we produce given a certain number of inputs. This rate can be measured in terms of quality, quantity, or value. That means if we're able to improve the quality, increase the quantity, or enhance the value of our outputs for every hour of work, dollar we spend, or even particle of our natural resources that we use, we have improved our productivity. This is the only way to achieve a higher standard of living. Naturally, productivity is an important concept for businesses, but is also an important concept for households, students, athletes, and artists. We're not leaving anybody behind. And so with a productivity-focused attitude, we can make improvements in our everyday lives and can support more wealth and health for ourselves and this blessed nation of ours. The Jamaica Productivity Center's motto is achieving Jamaica's productivity potential. We're going to ask you before we proceed to, because your feedback is important to us, to complete the short productivity perception survey. If you complete the survey before 3:30 this afternoon, you'll be prompted to enter for a chance to win a prize. How about that? Who wants to win a prize? Okay. All right, so that is coming up. And so through public education, research, and technical training, the Jamaica Productivity Center strives to spread the message of productivity and assist in creating an environment that supports productivity improvement. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the reason why we're here today celebrating World Productivity Day 2022. Now, we have an esteemed panel of experts to discuss what productivity means in this evolving digital era. After all, the thinking is the more technology we have, the more advancements in technology, the more productive we become. But the statistics are suggesting otherwise, that we have been slow in effectively sort of synergizing all the key elements in order to move as a whole. And so we have work to do there. We also hope to discuss pivotal areas that will help Jamaica improve and become more digitized. How to efficiently balance technology, innovation, and people. Solutions, best practices, and success stories related to productivity management in the digitized world. How digitization can improve productivity, economic growth, and job creation. How the future of work will impact all of us, from the baby boomers to Generation Z. I'm sure we're at another level now. Are we still at Z? I mean, things are moving so quickly. But how digital literacy can facilitate or hinder productivity improvement. The role of innovation, keyword, the role, and you'll learn more later on. There's a competition and some presentations to be made. So the role of innovation in the new normal, if there is even such a thing anymore, and the related impacts on people and business. When industries are prepared for the future of work, which of these industries are actually prepared for the future of work? The risks and benefits of technological advancements to our citizens. So we've put enough out there for you to, pardon the expression, ruminate on, and then when your opportunity comes, you can express yourselves accordingly. But before that, we're going to invite Mr. Junior Bennett to lead us in prayer. Mr. Bennett is a lecturer of industrial engineering at the University of Technology and the leader of the UTech Jamaica Productivity Research Group.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. At this time, I'm going to ask those who are able to stand, please to stand, or to assume an attitude of reverence as we invite our Lord and Savior. Let us pray. Righteous, eternal, Heavenly Father, King of kings and Lord of lords, we come before your presence on this very important day, World Productivity Day. Lord, we recognize, dear Lord, that there are many things that we need to give you thanks for. We thank you for the refreshing opportunity that we have, especially those who are seated here, of seeing and interacting with each other that we haven't seen for a long time. Oh God, we thank you for this day where we can recognize the importance of productivity. Even in your words you declare, you wish above all things that we should prosper and be in good health, even as our soul prospered. So you want us to be prosperous as a people, as a country, as the different ministries, departments, agencies, and private sector. You want us to be prosperous. You want us to be productive. And so we are here today to celebrate our productivity gains. We are here to examine the areas that we need to improve on those areas that we have struggled, to tackle. This is the opportunity, dear Lord, that you have provided that we can put our ideas together. And we know that today already have begun to be a productive day and will continue to be. We pray a blessing on those persons that will be leading out in the different areas. We pray, oh God, for those who are connecting online. We pray, oh God, that you will help us to be productive, not only in our professional lives, because for it to be sustainable, we need to be productive in our personal lives. We pray, oh God, that you will help us not only to be selfishly seeking to be more productive, but you will help us, dear Lord, to help others, to empower them so that they can be productive. And we pray, oh God, that the measures that we'll use will be sustainable. We pray, oh God, that we'll be humble enough to recognize that some of the strategies that we have used are not working, and we'll be wise enough to explore new opportunities. Lord, we lack wisdom. And you said in your words, if any lack wisdom, they should ask of you. So today, we ask of you, dear Lord, to grant us wisdom so that we can make Jamaica the most productive island, the most productive country in this universe. We pray for Christ's sake. Amen. You may be seated.
And so the long and short of it, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is that we're just about ready to hear from the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Mrs. Colette Robert Risden. No need to adjust the microphone.
I think I will have to adjust, Mr. Malcolm. I'm not as vertically challenged. For the persons joining us online, I gather Minister Samuda is joining us online, so I'd like to acknowledge Minister Samuda, Honorable Carl Samuda, Mr. Anthony Hyde, Chairman of the Jamaica Productivity Center, moderators, panelists, ministry and JPC staff, other persons in the public sector who are here. I see persons from the Cabinet Office and Ministry of Finance, two very important areas of government. Jamaicans joining us online and on radio, representatives from the media, other distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Is it too early after lunch or is it too late? Good afternoon. Okay, that sounds a little more lively. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here today to bring greetings on behalf of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Today's forum, hosted by the Jamaica Productivity Center, provides all of us with an opportunity to learn and explore new modalities that will be shared by our expert panelists, which will assist us in boosting productivity and efficiency in our daily operations. For many of you who may not know, each year, this date is observed right across the world as World Productivity Day. And through initiatives such as this forum, Jamaican citizens from all spheres of life continue to learn about what they can do to remain productive and efficient in their ways. The theme for this year's forum, Productivity in a Digitized World, provides a peek into the future and how productivity output will be heavily dependent on the digital transformation process. And I'm sure many of you in the last 2 years would see the extent to which digitalization, kind of get tongue-tied sometimes with the digi things, how it has changed much of what we are doing and more. But I want to encourage that as public and private sector, as we move to a more digital, did I get that right? Digital economy, that we don't forget why we are here and who we're doing it for, which is for the public at large. Meaning, let us not forget the human side to our economy and all our productive endeavors. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic brought about serious economic and social challenges, largely affecting productivity output across the various sectors. However, the harshness of its impact has given way to new modalities and thinking with respect to gauging and monitoring of resources to maximize efficiency in our activities. It is evident that the future of our world will greatly depend on our ability as individuals to swiftly adapt to those new modalities and the rapid pace of technological advancements. This now means that the onus is heavily rested on our shoulders to equip our homes, schools, workplaces with the knowledge and tools needed to maneuver in this fourth industrial revolution. And I would like to add that if we don't get the base of the technology right, which is the basic internet connectivity, then all the work that we're doing in terms of moving to become a more digital and digitalized economy, we're not going to see the true impact if we don't improve the base on which we need to work with. The Jamaica Productivity Center has been moving steadily on its path in ensuring that value through productivity is understood and appreciated at the basic level. So far, the message of productivity being everybody's business has been echoed right across the Jamaica Productivity Center, and over the years they've been doing a number of initiatives, and this is one such initiative in terms of the Productivity Forum. They've been working with Mind, they've been working with JamPro, they've been working with I don't know who, lots of small businesses, medium-sized enterprises, to improve productivity awareness and to improve the level of productivity in Jamaica. They have done quite a bit of work within my ministry, and I know that there is even a lot more work that they can do in other ministries. As the Jamaica Productivity Center continues to set the stage as the lead agency on productivity measurement, monitoring, and strategy implementation, it is our hope that Jamaican citizens will see and appreciate its value to development. Interestingly, exciting things are ahead. Currently, the Jamaica Productivity Center is spearheading the development of a national policy on productivity and continues work apace on, the National Productivity Policy, which will guide the improvements in efficiency and support the conditions to drive a better quality of life in Jamaica. And while we do these forums, and I congratulate the JPC on forums like this and the initiatives that they're doing with a range of our public and private sector entities, I'm going to challenge the team that we have to find a way to bring the productivity message to the small man. I know we have done it, but I think we need to redouble our efforts with the small man. And when I say the small man, I'm talking about the everyday, average Jamaican, the farmer out in the field, your vendor out in Carnation Market, everybody. Let us redouble our efforts and see how we can bring that message to everyone, especially that group. I think a lot is happening in Jamaica, but I think people just don't know and need a little extra push and boost. In closing, I wish to congratulate the entire Productivity Center team on the work that they've been doing in the field and with the organization of this forum, aimed at educating Jamaicans to see and achieve greater value by working smarter within the context of digital transformation. I'm confident that our deliberations will allow us to move Jamaica actively towards productivity in a digitized world, laying the foundation for a more advanced and efficient Jamaica for all of us to enjoy. Thank you.
Time now for us to hear from the chairman of the Jamaica Productivity Center, Mr. Anthony Hyde.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe the PS has pretty much covered all that there needs to be covered by way of introduction of the subject matter that we'll be discussing today. I also think the Master Sermon is an excellent job as well. So I'll just recognize that our Prime Minister is unable to join us, but he has sent us his message. The Minister of Labour and Social Security, the Honourable Carl Samudo, will be joining us online, and I'd like to personally welcome our Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Mrs. Colette Roberts-Risden. Welcome, PS. Members of the Advisory Board of Productivity Center of Jamaica, our Chief Technical Director, Mrs. Tamar Nelson, the panelist, Mrs. Teresa Turner-Jones, Principal Consultant at Max Goyen Limited, Mr. Stephen Price, Vice President and General Manager of Flow, Ms. Gillian Carrodos, Divisional Director of the Ministry of Divisional Director of Industrial Relations and Allied Services at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Mr. Tyrone Wilson, Founder, President and CEO of iCreate, members of the media, guests here at the turnover and online. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the Jamaica Productivity Center annual celebration of World Productivity Day. Much have already been said on this matter, and I don't think it would be fair to you to labor you with more of those matters that has already been said. Just to say that the transition is on the way. We have witnessed the positive impact that complementary policies and management systems can have. Let me remind you that policies can make the greatest impact on productivity. Let us use Singapore as an illustration, and it has been used many times before, but let us do it once more. A country very much like Jamaica, rich in manpower, their government placed its highest priority on human resource development and made productive efforts to enhance labor productivity and global competitiveness. Policy support allow the country to grow from its traditional role as a regional port and distribution center in the 1960s to an international manufacturing, knowledge-intensive technical services center. Their per capita income grew from $533,000 US in 1965 to a GDP per capita income of US $59,500 in 2021. Just think of that. Think how significant that is. A strong bond between education, digital skill development, and natural development a strong bond between education, digital skill development, and national development is necessary for effective national growth. In Jamaica, policies and programs that prioritize our national resources, human capital, and technical infrastructure will raise our productivity levels. The center has done much work to facilitate and participate in this growth as it continues to develop its national productivity improvement policy, which PS just referred to, and provides services to assist companies towards improving their productivity levels. Likewise, the government of Jamaica continues to initiate policies and programs to induce the growth of productivity in our nation. As we follow their lead, let us all learn and work to see how we can increase our productivity through technology, innovation, and human development. Ladies and gentlemen, I once again welcome you. But just before I close, I'd like if you just stand for a moment. We, over the last week, lost a very important member of our board. And I'd just like, in recognition of that member, if you stand for a moment of silence. May his soul rest in peace. Our board member, Anif Brown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hyde. At this time, we're going to turn our attention to the screen as we hear from the Minister of Labor and Social Security, the Honorable Carl Samuda.
Am I being heard? Okay, fine. Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's an event that is a very important one, and I've attended all since becoming Minister of Labor and Social Security. So I appreciate the fact that we are having this today, and it's occurring at a time that is very critical, because last year we were preoccupied with COVID-19. Now that we are emerging from that position, it's very timely that we should be meeting like this. So I am pleased to join you this year in your World Productivity Day Forum, organized by our own Jamaica Productivity Center. Mr. Chairman, the one thing I'd like to point out, though, is that some of these technologies that we use must be carefully checked as the process goes forward, because unfortunately I lost most of what the permanent secretary said and almost all of what you said, because in the background there was a conversation taking place, which actually still is occurring. I can hear it in the background. So those are the little details that will sort of come into play that disrupts it. Productivity in a digital world. In a sense, this is what we are gathered to explore today: how we can enhance productivity in a post-labor market, harnessing and harmonizing technology, innovation, and people to create a new normal in a digitized world. Our ability to share this event virtually with persons anywhere in the world demonstrates the practicality of digital technology. I still hear somebody talking in the background. It has facilitated more persons join us in a flexible, convenient manner. And we have saved a lot of time, money, and travel costs back and forth over the past several months. And it has become the new normal for communication in the world of work. This will certainly enable us to meet our objectives of advancing the productivity revolution to foster economic growth and development. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our critical mission on this World Productivity Day, when global attention is focused on stimulating competitiveness and efficiency across economies and societies. Regrettably, the Jamaican economy has been negatively impacted by a lack of growth in productivity over the past 35 years. It is that elusive pimpernel that has haunted us for many, many years. Estimates by the Jamaica Productivity Center has shown that trends in labor productivity levels over the past 20 years have decreased by 17% in Jamaica, as compared with 47% increase in countries such as our neighboring Dominican Republic. Specifically, within the same period, Jamaica's output per worker decreased by 0.9% per year, compared with an average annual increase of 2% in the Dominican Republic. Between 2019 and 2021, productivity declined by 3.1% in Jamaica and grew by 4.6% in the Dominican Republic. I make the comparison with the Dominican Republic because we are so similar, despite a difference in language, but we are so similar in terms of our history and our production and the levels at which we have engaged the productive sector. This serves to emphasize the point that we have a lot of room for improvement. We simply cannot achieve sustainable economic growth unless we achieve growth in our levels of productivity and consequently improve our standard of living. In short, improved productivity is directly related to improved quality of life. It is as simple as that. It is my hope that today's dialogue will assist in this progression. At last year's Productivity Forum, quite understandably, as I said, we were preoccupied with the problems faced by the COVID-19 pandemic. This year, in taking the narrative a step further, we are exploring the country's innovation, reorientation, and readiness to advance into the fourth industrial revolution, or is it called IK in tech language, I am told. This fourth revolution, which is already impacting us, it's not a thing far away in the future, it is already impacting us, requires that we find effective ways to be part of the rapidly advancing world of biotechnology, as well as digital, physical, and artificial intelligence. As the Minister Director responsible for seeing to the advancement of productivity at the workplace, rest assured that I will spare no effort in facing these challenges. This effort has already been, the question of e-commerce has already begun as we see the expansion of e-commerce and online shopping. We can see where there was increased productivity in every quarter last year in the wholesale and retail trade industry, with the last 2 quarters recording increases of 1.1% and 11.5% respectively. Capitalizing on this trend, the 2022 national budget has allocated approximately $5 billion through the Development Bank of Jamaica to finance MSMEs with solutions aimed at increasing e-commerce, including the installment of online payments and other e-commerce facilities, cross-border e-commerce and trading, and digital food ordering. In terms of financial technology, fintech, as I am told it is called, financial technology is already automating global finances. Locally, Jamdex is emerging as one of our digital Jamaica currency, and more banking apps are being initiated and updated for convenient use. Fintech allows for efficient ease of transactions, and more importantly, for more Jamaicans to be incorporated into the formal banking system, a thing that is very urgently needed as we seek to join the rest of the world in modernizing banking principles and facilities. It is imperative that other sectors, such as agriculture, transportation, construction, etc., transform attitudes, resources, and systems to become 22nd century ready. But Jamaica's move towards higher technological advancement is being hampered by low levels of foreign and local investments. Already, although we are making progress in some sectors, we must attract more investment for greater growth. We must also reorient, nurture, and train the labor force for these technological opportunities and allow them to participate actively in the process. Technology is the way forward. The use of appropriate technology is critical for advancement and development in the industrial world. Investment in research and development will empower and enable firms and businesses to introduce new technological advances, and those who innovate have their higher labor productivity than others. The World Bank estimates that R&D amounted to only 0.6% of Jamaica's GDP in 2002, whereas the world average was just over 2%. So already we can see that we are woefully behind in the application of research and development in our economic growth strategy. Following this was noted in 2017 that R&D in the Latin America and Caribbean accounted for 0.7% of GDP compared to 2.1% for the world. So as a region, we are simply not, or we have not up to now paid sufficient attention to the issue of research and development. The ministry appointed COVID-19 labor market task force sought to address issues affecting the labor market in the pandemic, including increasing job creation and employment, garnering financial assistance through international development institutions, focusing on infrastructure development and the importance of a workplace that is technologically driven. The ministry and the government as a whole anticipates implementing policies which will propel productivity and improve industrial competitiveness to support faster growth, create jobs, and improve wealth, education, security, and governance. Meanwhile, the JPC is engaged in other initiatives, including spearheading the development of the ministry's policy on productivity. Work continues apace on the national policy on productivity, which will guide the improvements in efficiency and support conditions to drive a better quality of life in Jamaica. And I really wish to pause to commend the level of enthusiasm and support that we are seeing through the efforts of the members of the JPC to improve on what they found. And there are signs that this improvement is beginning to show results. We have to accelerate the pace, however. I'm aware that the center is also looking at the new wave and attitude of entrepreneurism among Jamaicans. That is a very easy thing to achieve, I would imagine, because I think most Jamaicans are natural entrepreneurs anyway. But I do stress the importance of creating opportunities so that the entrepreneurs can take advantage of new technology and applied development in marketing their products. New generations have an entrepreneurial spirit which underpins the whole issue, and it is driven by a sense of passion and desire for inclusiveness and social justice. In moving forward, workplaces must consider the new mindset and interests of up-and-coming employees and leaders. There must be developed a new strategy to balance individual creativity with company interests in a harmonious fashion. Companies with an entrepreneurial mindset can allow their employees room to innovate and pursue new ideas instead of harnessing their energy and not giving them that opportunity to explore the depth of their creativity. And there is nothing that I believe in than the union that can exist between the company and the entrepreneurial spirit within an employee that together can improve the viability of the company involved. The environment will make a business attractive to creative employees, and it will lead to interest in the products that are made, because it will have a revolving developmental strategy where new products are innovated, new marketing strategies are created, new employment is created as a result. So as I close, ladies and gentlemen, I reiterate that productivity is the key to economic growth and productivity. A truism recognized on both sides of the aisle in Parliament. This is not a government business. This is not a JLP business. This is not a PNP business. This is a Jamaican consideration. This is a Jamaican business. The word productivity and productive have been mentioned over 50 times in Parliament since 2021. This leads me to believe in earnest that all Jamaicans, despite party preferences, affiliations, or any other consideration, understand the importance of productivity in the growth and prosperity agenda. What eludes us is the fact that at times resources are not forthcoming. At times we are distracted by things like the pandemic last year and other things. Crime and violence is creating havoc with the young people who are seeking to get ahead in life by getting a job, creating new techniques and methods of management, and generally creating wealth for our country. We are working assiduously to come to grips with that. And in fact, I've just taken a few minutes out of cabinet where we are having that discussion right now. The task today is to gather opinions, ideas, and solutions on how to accomplish this as employers and investors, as well as our workforce and wage earners. As non-governmental organizations and academia, as civil and civil-minded groups as well. I'm confident that our deliberations will enable us to move Jamaica actively towards productivity in a digital world, laying the foundation for more sustainable economic growth and development of our beloved nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Samuda. And now another video message, this time from the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Mark Golding.
With great pleasure that I join the Jamaica Productivity Center and the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in celebrating World Productivity Day. This year, World Productivity Day is being celebrated under the theme, Productivity in a Digitized World. This is a most relevant theme as we seek to navigate the challenges of the post-COVID world. While the trend towards digital transformation began before 2020, the pandemic rapidly accelerated this process as organizations struggled to innovate their operations in seeking to survive the onslaught of lockdowns and other social distancing measures. A key response has been the intensification of reliance on digital communications and digital transactions in order to maintain productivity. Here in our region in 2020, the Inter-American Development Bank published a study which indicated that the low level of economic growth which we have enjoyed in this region is as a result of a chronic productivity deficit. Sadly, Jamaica has one of the lowest productivity rates in the Caribbean, so increasing our national productivity is an essential prerequisite to achieving significantly higher levels of real GDP growth. We must find effective ways to ensure that our inputs are more efficiently converted into outputs, and that will require greater adoption of technology and the modernization of the capacities of our workforce and management. The skills and processes of the 20th century are increasingly outdated, though still very prevalent in Jamaica, and these need to be reoriented and upgraded so as to enhance our productivity and competitiveness. This thinking is not new. Indeed, it was this awareness which led to the establishment of the Jamaica Productivity Center. Nonetheless, we still have a very long way to go. Our tertiary educational institutions and our vocational and training colleges must redouble their efforts to find effective ways of delivering 21st century content and skills to our future workers and managers. This will entail thinking out of the box so that as many of our people as possible can benefit from the upgrading of their productive capacities and the certification of their skills. The Jamaica Productivity Center has begun crafting a framework for a national productivity improvement policy. It is hoped that this will lay the foundation for Jamaica to build a more productive labor force that can meet the rapidly evolving demands of our economy and indeed the global economy. We look forward to the full implementation of this policy as we continue to work towards Vision 2030's goal of achieving an efficient and harmonious labour market, sustaining a prosperous society and economy, supported by a trained, educated and productive workforce that is attractive to quality, job-creating investments. Happy World Productivity Day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Golding. We pause briefly to acknowledge our sponsors, Airwatt Manufacturing Company. Any representative here? Thank you very much. Airwatt Manufacturing Company. How about National Commercial Bank? Thank you very much for your support. It's time now for us to introduce to you Michael Ann Urquhart, Senior Director of Research and Measurement at the Jamaica Productivity Center, as she presents on productivity in a digitalized world.
Good afternoon. I would like to recognize the presence of our Prime Minister, who would have the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, who would have been sending his greetings with us today. The Honorable Minister of Labor and Social Security, Carl Samuda. Also like to recognize Madam Colette Robert Wisdom of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, the Permanent Secretary. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the advisory boards, our esteemed panels, the media, and all of our guests here at online. Now, it's a wonderful opportunity to be here to be able to talk about productivity. So far we've gotten the call and the charge for what productivity is and why it's important for the country. So I want to now bring it home and for us to understand what are the numbers, where are we, and where do we want to be? Now, when we talk about productivity in a digitized world, we want to understand first what a digitized world is. And when we speak about a digitized world, we're talking about the increasing prevalence of digital tools being used in society. So we're looking at digital transformation. And when we speak to digital transformation, what we're looking at is how we are using or changing our business processes, our business models, how we engage with our customers while utilizing digital tools. So what we see is that there's now greater access and use of digital technologies throughout our society. And if we look at the world, what we find is that in 2014, only about 12 billion devices were estimated to have been connected on what we call the Internet of Things, right? So Internet of Things is where we have a lot of devices that can speak to one another over Wi-Fi or the Internet. Now, in 2018 or 2017, it was estimated that that value went up to 27 billion devices. And it is estimated that in 2030, we're going to be at 120 billion devices. Now, if we look at that compared to the number of persons in the world, we're at 8 billion persons in the world, right? So if you think about that in terms of how we're using the devices and we're becoming more dependent in terms of our interaction with the devices and how we communicate, it's very significant. So we started at 2014 at about 1.4 devices per person, and we're moving now to a point where we're at over five devices per person. So now we want to consider productivity in a digitized world. What is productivity? When we think about productivity, we're thinking about efficiency in terms of how we're able to transform our inputs into our outputs. So we're thinking about things like our labor, our capital, our technology, and the outputs are goods and services. And depending on when you're thinking about productivity, you can even think about your output as a desired goal or an outcome. Now, in order to ensure that we're getting the most gains, we also want to think about the effectiveness of what we're producing. So in looking at effectiveness, we're looking at how we're producing so that we can get a better quality outcome. Now, in terms of making that link between productivity and technology, we recognize that technology is actually the only or the most significant factor that is going to help us to have productivity gains that are going to be sustainable over the long term. So we know that in order to produce more goods or services, we could always increase more input. We can increase our inputs. But what about if we wanted to keep the same amount of inputs and then increase our outputs? It means that we would need to have some change in terms of how we're processing. And a way in which we can have a sustainable change is through technology. Now, the World Bank would actually estimate that from 2008 to 2018, about 65 to 75% of the increases in productivity throughout the world would have actually been based on investments related to technology. So we're looking at things like education, processes, tools, devices, and physical capital. The OECD, however, has recognized that in looking across a set of European countries, we would have realized that firms that are more likely to have access and flexibility in their digital skills are going to be more likely to have higher levels of productivity, right? So this is going to show us that higher levels of productivity are supported by digital skills. So we want to be along that path. However, if we take a look at our total factor productivity, and when we talk about total factor productivity, we're looking at our level of productivity if we consider all of the outputs that have been created. All of our outputs that have been created given all the inputs that are used. And when we think about our inputs, we're thinking about, again, our capital, our labor, and our investments, those things that we know that we can quantify. But there's also a set of inputs that are what we call intangible and much harder to measure. So those would relate to aspects like our level of health, our level of education, the level of technical use, and our digital skills. So if we look at the period from 2000 to 2001, and we compare countries, we compare nations. Can I get the next slide? So if we compare nations, we see that the average growth in total factor productivity would be minus 1.2 for Jamaica. Now, unfortunately, this is not where we want to be. And if we look at countries that have high level of outputs and are moving along the digital momentum, like China, we see that they're having positive growth in total factor productivity. And what's important to note is that our total factor productivity is going to be an indicator of how well our GDP is performing. So if our total factor productivity is weak, we expect that our gross domestic product, or the amount of output that our country is producing overall, is also going to be weak. Now, we also recognize that in looking at our total factor productivity and weak productivity, there are also issues where we talked about those immeasurable concepts. And it's an issue worldwide where we believe that we have a productivity paradox, where over recent years, there's been a decline in the growth of productivity. And in part, this is due because we have new technical tools that we are now accessing, but we have not yet fully recognized how to quantify them. And this is one of the challenges that we have, and I'll talk about it more as we go forward. Now, as we look at labor productivity actually looks at the amount of output per worker. In this case, we're looking at the amount of output per hour of worker. And what we find over the period of 2000 to 2001 again is that the average growth for Jamaica over the time period each year would have been a decline of 0.9, where we see other countries again advancing. Now, this is particularly interesting and maybe even a little bit worrying because we have made so many wonderful gains in our employment. So we would have lowered our unemployment rates and we would have reached record-breaking employment rates at the same time. So now we just have to engage our tools, our digital tools, to be able to push us forward so that productivity can help our GDP match the gains that we've made in labor. Now, another factor that we would recognize is going to slow our productivity down or can hamper our productivity is the amount of research and development investments that we have. The World Bank would have estimated that in 2018, the world's average R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP would have been 2.2%. This compares to the Latin America region in which it was only 0.67%. So we see that we need to make more gains in research and development. And this is very important because research and development is an important driver for innovation. Next two slides. If we look at the change in labor productivity post-COVID, we would see that we are recovering in terms of our gains in productivity. Next slide. From the period of October to December 2021, we would have seen that we would have had a year-over-year increase of 0.9% when we compare October to December 2021 to October to December 2020. These gains would have largely been realized in the tourism sector. There were also some gains made in the electricity and water industry, as well as gains made in agriculture. So we see that there's still room to grow, but this is where we are now. Now, looking towards the future, if we say that we want to be more productive, it means that we have to have our labor force be equipped and ready for what we call the future of work. And when we look at the future of work, we have to recognize that with new digital tools and digital transformation, there's going to be a change in the type of jobs that persons will have access to. And there are some jobs that are going to become extinct. Now, the World Economic Forum did a Future of Jobs survey, and they would have found that a number of roles would have been made redundant. That would have represented a decline of about 6.6 percentage points. So we expect that about 85 million jobs are going to be displaced due to automation. So because of machineries, AIs. However, with this, we expect that digital transformation will create jobs. So there's still the opportunity that approximately 97 million jobs can be created because of this new interaction between people and machines. Now, if we look at some of the, If we look at some of the jobs that are going to be no longer existing or hard to find jobs in, we're looking at data entry clerks. This is something that AI technology can do. We're looking at postal service clerks. People don't need to physically transfer messages anymore. We have internet, we have social media in order to get messages across. Human resource specialists in a particular way. I hope I'm not hurting anybody's feelings here today. Now, if we look towards the future of work, however, we're going to see that there's going to be a lot more jobs related to STEM and creativity. And if we include creativity, you can think about it as STEAM, right? So we're looking at jobs for data analysts and scientists, persons who know how to analyze big data, more project managers as we have strategies to shift towards digitization and digitalization. We're going to recognize that project managers are going to be key in coordinating persons that are operating in different places. Fintech engineers, where we have new digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, is going to be important. Now, if we think about not only the future of work, but how we're going to measure and quantify our productivity, we recognize that there's also going to be some challenges. Now, the first challenge that we're going to see, next slide. Again. So the first challenge we're going to see is how do we measure what we consider to be unmeasurable? So before I would have talked about those intangible things, right? How do we measure the input of new digital systems in our processes? How do we measure that at the national level? How do we account for these things? These are things that we have to now start to think about and include in our regulations, our policies, and our systems as we go forward. We also want to think about how we are going to be able to measure the impact of digital investments on our firms and our organizations. This means we have to now look at new indicators for measuring productivity. For example, we might not want to just look at the return on investments, but we might want to look at the return on specifically digital investments. We will also now want to look at how we're not tracking our talent overall, but how we're tracking our technical talent, right? So for example, how are we promoting our technical talent compared to our non-technical talent in one instance? How are we recruiting these persons? What is the retention rate of technical talent compared to other talents? And these can give us indications of how well our digital investments are working. And finally, we want to think about how we can actually utilize digital tools to help us measure our productivity and to improve our productivity. So we have now online systems, especially when we think about working from home, that can help you to monitor work and to assess the productivity of your employees. There are systems now where we can set up Kanban or 5S systems online that would help us work more efficiently and for us to have collaborative meetings without having face-to-face and reduce the amount of waste in our resources and time. Now, I'd like to thank you for your time, and just remember that the Productivity Center is here. If you need help in terms of your assessment of productivity for your organization, we are here to help. You just have to reach out to us. If you'd like information or research relating to productivity, we can also help with that. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mikhail and Urquhart. There is a lot to consider, and our panel is coming up. I was reading, and you would have known about it, you would have heard about it, that in England right now, in the UK, they have about 70 firms, businesses, companies engaged in a project essentially from now until December as they explore a 4-day work week. So that is happening right now, some 3,300 people involved there. And then there is in Japan, the Japanese government has said, hey, sit down with your team members and see what kind of strategies can be worked out and whether this 4-day-a-week exercise can work. And the fact that obviously you do your 40 hours, however you want to do your 40 hours, whatever you negotiate, and so on. But more of that a little later on, I'm sure. It will come up again perhaps in the discussion. But first, let's introduce you to our panel chair, Mr. Rhys Campbell. For more than 15 years, Rhys has worked in the industries of fast-moving consumer goods, FMCGs, energy, and telecommunications. His multifaceted experience has enabled him to ideate, I love that word, and implement game-changing strategies and sales architecture, which have ultimately yielded multi-million-dollar revenue increases and market share for several companies across the English, Dutch, and French-speaking Caribbean. And the French would say, ooh la la. Currently, his work at Liberty Latin America Group, the parent company of Flow Jamaica, sees him tasked with driving commercial strategic alignment, business intelligence, and business continuity for the multinational's most recent acquisition of Costa Rica's two largest telecommunications providers, Movistar and Cable Tica.
Yes.
He has served as chairman of the Prime Minister's Youth Awards for National Excellence, and he now sits on the boards of the Vocational Training Development Institute, VTDI, and the Jamaica Productivity Center, JPC. Reese holds a Bachelor of Science in International Relations with a double minor in Political Science and Spanish, and a Master of Science in Government, specializing in International Relations and International Trade, both from the University of the West Indies. We'll do it like they do in Madison Square Gardens. We'll make a quick transition, and then when we come back from that transitional, it will be time for our panel discussion.
No, it doesn't. Ah, here we are. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. That first time was just to see if you are listening. Now I have full confidence you are listening. My name is Reese Campbell, and I am your Chief Productivity Officer. I'd like to call myself for today. And I have a simple task, which is to navigate, like an air traffic controller, you through the proceedings of how we will be speaking about productivity and digitization. P.S. I have the same problem with that word, digitization. So I'm going to ask you and all members of the audience here and in the digital world, bear with me. All right, so my first task is just to quickly introduce the respective members of the panel, and then I'm going to invite Tamar Nelson, who is the Chief Technical Director here at the Jamaica Productivity Center, to speak to us a little bit about what's happening today. But let me start by introducing Mrs. Therese Turner-Jones on my left here, who is the Principal Consultant at Max Gwen Limited. Therese, don't worry, I'm not going to read the full biodata because we will be here until the end of the day. But most notably, Therese has had the distinct pleasure to work for two of the largest multilateral institutions in the world, the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, and the IMF. So if there's anyone who can tell us about what is happening in productivity, not just here in Jamaica, but perhaps internationally, it is Therese. Next, we will introduce Stephen Price. Now, Mr. Price is the Vice President for Cable and Wireless Communications. They operate in over 34 countries across the English, Spanish, and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. And most notably, Stephen is the General Manager for Flow Jamaica here in Jamaica, and the chairman of the Flow Foundation. Again, I'm not going to go down the road of the accolades because we will be here for quite a bit of time if I attempt to do that. And most notably, Stephen is my former boss. Let me introduce you to Miss Gillian Carrodos, who is a Divisional Director for Industrial Relations and Allied Services at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security here in Jamaica. She has also served as a Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Jamaica. She brings a wealth of knowledge to what we'll be talking about for productivity as well. Mrs. Tamar Nelson, I would have spoken to you about. She's our Chief Technical Director here at the Jamaica Productivity Center. And last, and certainly by no means least, we have the illustrious Tyrone Wilson, who is the founder, president, and CEO of iCreate. It is a creative institute developed with the aim of filling gaps in skills training. And most recently, Tyrone has had a new venture. He's the executive chairman of Parallel Real Estate Ventures, where they would have launched, let's say, over the last 2 months ago, I believe it was, Tyrone. So, ladies and gentlemen, a collective round of applause for all of our panelists this afternoon. Thank you very much. So, Tamar, I want you to tell us a little bit about productivity. This is something you and I talk about on a regular and consistent basis.
Very regularly. Well, it's a pleasure to have you all with us today, both those who are in person and online. It's really good to see faces and to interact with humans. We're talking about a digital world, so we can connect with, a wider audience. Of course, we could not host everybody here today, but the JPC is here. We are on a mission to assist the nation to be more productive and innovative and competitive through productivity, advocacy, consultancy, and research and knowledge management, along with technical assistance. Our strategic focus is to create an environment that encourages and enables innovation, flexibility, and productivity, which is in line with the SDG number 8, which speaks to promoting a sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, and productive employment and decent work for all. So we have a very important role to play. And we saw it fit that World Productivity Day be celebrated to increase the awareness about and the importance of matters related to productivity, innovation, and efficiency. It is so critical, as the PS mentioned, that we raise awareness of productivity to maximize the output of the goods and services produced while maximizing utilization. And the goal is to really enhance the competitiveness and efficiency in all areas of the Jamaican economy so that Jamaica can become a global leader. And so today, what we want to highlight goes beyond simply boosting output, but we want to emphasize the holistic concept that considers issues related to environment, quality, technology, and human resource development, among other things, because everything has to come together for productivity to work. And so when we looking at World Productivity Day, it gives us a chance that we can celebrate our achievements, and we have to recognize the achievements that we have made, and later on we'll be going into that. We want to also have a chance to set goals for ourselves that we can go beyond where we are currently, and to look at what gems we can pick up in terms of meaningful habits that we can pick up as individuals, organizations, to really move the needle forward. And in a digital economy context, we cannot focus only on improvement, but we also have to focus on innovation. Improvement gives us those incremental internal steps that moves us forward, but the innovation will give us those market leaps and bounds that we really want to see. So improvements has to be balanced with innovation for it to work. And the gains from improvements can be reinvested in innovation. So perhaps then the most important improvement that we can make is the improvement in the ability to innovate. And one definition that I saw of innovation was that innovation is the ability to convert ideas into invoices. So it's a way that we can actually, increase our profitability as well. And as I speak about innovation, I see our colleagues from the International Association of Innovation Professionals who are also leading the charge of innovation here in Jamaica, who will be working with closely as we strive to increase innovation in the local context. And so when we are talking about our innovation ability, we need to first define what it is so that all of us are on the same page, to establish a culture of innovation, to invest in it, and also to continuously look at exploring emerging technologies so that we can also be ahead of the game. And of course, as this is not something that we can do in silos. This is something that we have to collaborate. So we have to collaborate with universities. So we're happy to see University of Technology represented, and I think the University of the West Indies is also here with us, so that we can really focus as colleagues, as groups, as businesses on this area to see how we can innovate. And often when we're looking for innovations, we tend to look within our own industry, but innovations can be found everywhere, right? And I'll draw on the PS's speech again, speaking about the man in the street. Sometimes just by going to Coronation Market, for example, you'll see some quite innovative things there. And there might be somebody, while you're on vacation, that gives you an idea that will cause an innovation in your industry. So sometimes you have to look outside of the realm in which we work to get those insights. And so today, as the world of work changes, technology and digital skills are a must. And so even though Jamaica is a labor-rich country and we fear these job displacement, which may be true, and they are coming, but what they also provide is an opportunity to reallocate the labor to support the technological development. And so our theme emphasizes the importance of the synergies, the investment, the research and development that's required for us to move forward. And so I won't take up any more time, Mr. Chairman, and I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Tamar. Those are some really good thoughts to get us going today. And I can guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to we're going to get straight into it. Because productivity is about efficiency, and efficiency is about using our time as best as possible to ensure that we can have some meaningful discussion. So I'm just going to ask each panelist just to share with us their general views and thoughts on productivity. And then we'll probably open up the floor to some other thoughts and processes as we go along. So Therese, I'll ask you to go first. Tell us a little bit about productivity.
Thank you. Thanks, Reese, and thank you for this very exciting crowd to be here. And happy World Productivity Day, everyone. I congratulate the JPC and the Ministry of Labor, former colleagues, for putting this on. So I'm an economist. I think most of you know that already. And so when economists think about productivity, Mikhail did an excellent job of walking us through total factor productivity. But I want to put it in even stronger perspective by linking that to GDP per capita. So the minister, Samuda, mentioned that the DR is way ahead of Jamaica in terms of productivity. Jamaica is lagging behind. You saw the data from the other countries around the world. Just put it in perspective, Jamaica's GDP per capita is just under $5,000 per year. Okay? 2021 number was 4,660. The equivalent number in the DR is something like 7,600. The Bahamas, the country I'm from, it's 25,000 almost. Barbados is 16,500. Estonia is close to 20,000. Okay, so what Mikhail was emphasizing and what successive governments in Jamaica have been emphasizing for decades is that this economy needs to grow so that on average Jamaicans can improve their quality of life by earning higher incomes. Somehow that hasn't happened. It's stuck around that 5,000 level, and so Jamaica is considered a middle-income country, but it's sort of stuck there. And yes, there are very wealthy people in Jamaica. The top 10% are doing quite well, but we know that people in the middle, and of course those at the bottom, are not doing very well, and there's not very much that you can do on $5,000 per year if you want to really educate your children, if you want to have a certain kind of lifestyle, if you want to have good health care and good education. So that number needs to increase, and that number is only going to increase if we can find ways to improve productivity. Mikhail noted very nicely what needs to happen there, but I want to emphasize a couple things. One, education. So when I came to Jamaica in 2013, of every school leaving cohort, only 15% of those children could enter into a tertiary level institution. In 2022, that number is hovering at around 35% now. So that means that there's been quite a dramatic improvement in outcomes in education over the last 9 years that I've been in Jamaica. But that's not enough, because it still means that 65% of all kids leaving high school every year can't matriculate to UE or UTech or some other tertiary level institution. That's a huge drag on productivity. Now, how can that be addressed in the context of some of the things that Mikhail mentioned? Upskilling, which was mentioned by the PS and also by the minister, is really important. We have to train that cohort of students, because that's a lot of people. That's your future labor force. These are the people who are coming to work at Flow or going to work in hotels, who are trying to get jobs in the global services sector, AKA the BPO sector. We need to do better than that 35%. That needs to be 75%. We need to flip that number. For the existing labor force, again, how do you augment that labor so that it can be more productive? And here is where the digital discussion comes in. How do we use technology better to make sure that the people who are working to their maximum efficiency? And here is where the whole digital transformation journey that's been going on in Jamaica, I've been here for 9 years, I've been associated with it for that time, needs to be accelerated. And what we saw in the last 2 years of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of that.
Right.
What we want to see is that it takes off even further, because what I'm seeing in 2022, as we're sort of coming back to work, doing face-to-face things, is there is now a lapse into the old ways of doing things, and we want to avoid that. We want to put away those photocopiers. We want to be scanning documents. We want to be doing as much digitally as we can, because that's where the efficiencies are going to come in, and that's where we reduce our costs. I want to share with you something that I think is really important, and that has to do with their interaction with the Jamaican citizen and the public service. And this might bite some people, but these are some real data. The average Jamaican visits a government office 4 times to complete a single transaction. It takes, on average, 4.1 hours to do any transaction in a government service. When we looked at the whole of the Caribbean, the Bahamas did better than any other country, came in at about 2.1. Jamaica came in at 4.1, the average is 4.3, Guyana is something like over 6 hours. That's time taken away from people being productive. So you walk into a tax office, you go to get a driver's license, you go to get a passport, it takes time.
Yep.
Part of the productivity thrust, if I may, has to be facilitated by the government sector. And this is where the whole drive to digital transformation, I think, is really important, because a lot of what people in the Caribbean, and Jamaica especially, do is a lot of face-to-face for government transactions. And in countries where we see total factor productivity to be improving, that doesn't happen. I don't need to leave my home to do a transaction in Estonia or in the United States or in Canada. When I'm interacting with the government, I can do it online, and by the way, it's much cheaper. We did some data. We produced a report in 2019. When I say we, I'm talking about the IDB, which showed that it costs about 2% if a transaction is done digitally versus if it were done face-to-face. In the UK, it costs about $15 if it's a face-to-face transaction. It's about 44 cents if it's a digital transaction. And that data is there in the report for you to see. But just to say that if we can drive more government transactions digitally, it would help improve a lot. I know you're going to come back and do another round, right? I don't want to put everything out there right
Well,
at once.
boy, Therese, you've given us a lot to think about. But I do want to quickly hear from Stephen, because Stephen, in his current capacity, you are obviously a part of a large network of connectivity. Give us your thoughts on productivity as it relates to what has happened over the last 2 years.
I think testing. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you now, Stephen.
Thank you very much. As Teresa said, to get more productive, to get this productivity index up, we have to really start moving on the path of digitization. It's a difficult journey for us as a country, but it's not unachievable. I think when you look at it, as a country, we have about 1 million homes in the country, right? Now, if you look at those homes, you have about 8 to 850,000 of those homes which are connected by electricity, right? Be it legal or illegal, right? Of those homes, I'd say broadband access passes somewhere in the region of about 700,000, right? I mean, I can speak for my network. And I am one of 30 plus licensees in the country that provide internet across the country. Now, with that amount of access, you'd think that the penetration should be much higher. But the challenge is, as Therese aptly pointed out, affordability is a concern for a population. Now, you look at that 4,800 GDP per capita. You break that down, that's just shy of minimum wage per week.
Yeah.
Right? So we have an affordability concern right across the country. So even if you said that everybody can get access, out of that 15,000 a week, I'm going to have to make sure I put back the money for power, the liquor rent, the food, the transport bill, water, all of these things, right?
Yeah.
So it's a tough challenge. Now, and I think for us to really embark on really fixing this challenge of us as a country, I think we have to look at the lessons that we've seen across the region. I'll point to emergency broadband benefit programs. Significant thing that can really help to push start penetration across the country. Now, circa of these homes that are covered, penetration is around 50%. We know it's not a matter of people not wanting the internet, but it's about affordability. Now, I think we were in some early instructions, Madam PS, just in terms of a particular path that we can go, right? No pun intended, right?
Madam Pierce, you quoted heavily today, Hope you're taking notes.
A particular path that we can go that will really jumpstart penetration in the country, and we have to start there. The reality is, if we are able to put more people and bring them into the age of connectivity, it will mean so much more for this nation. And it's a private-public sector kind of partnership that's required here. 30-plus licensees in terms of ISPs across the country. If the government is able to partner with them to make sure that the most vulnerable in our society are connected, they can. It is something essential, something that we think can really benefit. Therese will tell you, every percentage of broadband penetration that we achieve throws off an equivalent 3 or 4% increase in economic growth, productivity, this at work, So my space is really, how do we create that kind of environment? How do we create that kind of public-private sector partnership in order to really foster this growth and create the kind of platform that we need as a nation? This is one that will short-circuit it and make sure that we get there. 100,000+ homes on path, right, Madam Pierce? Imagine if we tapped into the most vulnerable in our society and got them connected. And I'm saying ISP agnostic. I'd love some other business, right? But ISP agnostic to really drive it. When we think about highways, we're not going to necessarily build a highway to give them a bit because the return on investment is not there, right? Same thing for the internet. If we don't have these kind of partnerships, the most vulnerable who can barely afford to pay, companies in the private sector would not necessarily outlay the kind of capital expenditure in order to get there. Now more than ever, we need that. And yes, there are companies like mine, Digicel, who are making the necessary investments right now to try and get there. In fact, right now, across the country, over 470,000 homes in our country have access to fiber fast technology. We have another 200,000 plus companies that we have to homes in terms of the old copper technology. That is still there, yes, because this is when the investment is needed. Right. We're going to put some more into that in order to make sure that, for instance, we cover that and make this country entirely fiber fast by the end of 2024. It's a big goal, but together with a public-private partnership, we can achieve it. Puerto Rico, the Biden Build Back Better plan in the Midwest, it's reaping those rewards. Puerto Rico, after the hurricane, their penetration is up. Even though they've lost some of the population who've moved to the States, their penetration is up. And they're on this path to developing. The only other thing I'd probably add for a handover to my other panelists is creating the sort of environment in our workplaces in terms of the private sector. How do you create the kind of environments? That 4-day week that we spoke about earlier, right, that the minister mentioned. In my organization, we have moved and pivoted to flexible working. You could actually do those 40 hours in 3 days in my organization if you so felt. You can do it in 4 days. You could work a 6-day week. It's a flexible working relationship that will make sure that you keep those Gen Zs who move around the place because they want that level of flexibility. I think the other thing that organizations have to learn in order to really develop on this productivity, you have to work with agility and flexibility. You have to create an organization which is always improving. The Japanese have a term called Kaizen, continuous improvement. It's how you have to look at your businesses. As Terry said, many companies missed the mark after this pandemic and pivoted back to their old ways of brick and mortar and doing things. You have to change the way you do things every single day. And then, even while you do that, you know that you're going to lose some jobs, right? You're going to lose some roles within your organization, but at the same time, you're going to develop new jobs. You have to create the environment of continuous learning in your organizations. Learning and development is an investment Stop seeing it as a cost.
Yep.
It is not a cost. You have to train your employees to take on new jobs. Because I said, in my organization, robotic process automation is there. I've had to retrench, in the past year, maybe about 40 employees to do new things.
Yep.
So you have to train them to do new things. Create that environment of continuous improvement in order to get there. Too many times you hear about graduates leaving the university and the degree they're graduating with is irrelevant. You have to start training. Degrees aren't necessarily the end-all be-all.
No, it just shows you're trainable.
You're trainable.
Yep.
But you have to create the environment of continuous improvement, continuous learning. It cannot stop, even till you're 60.
Yeah.
It cannot stop. But I won't hog the show, Chris.
Stephen, you've touched on a great point as it relates to digital education, and I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to just pivot quickly to you, Tyrone. Digital education. Tell us a little bit about this space. A lot of people think they know. You actually do. You're in the space. You're in the field. What is on the horizons, or what exists now as it relates to digital education, and what should we expect in the future?
Thank you. Thank you, Reese. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes.
Yeah, that mic seems to have a little bit of a challenge. But meanwhile,
Check.
while we just get you a new mic,
We're good.
right? All right. What I quickly want to probably do is to just remind us here that we should always focus on being productive instead of being busy. Productivity and busyness, two different patty in one bag, and everybody know you cannot put a beef and a chicken patty in the same bag. On that point now, Tyrone, I hope your mic is up and running and you're ready to go.
I think we're up and running now.
All right, great, Tyrone. Tell us about digital education.
Yeah. So just kind of pulling back to some of the the issues highlighted in terms of technology changes. We saw in the presentation earlier, some of the jobs that will be replaced, and some of the kind of new emerging and fast growing career opportunities. I think, tying it back to where we are as a country and where the pandemic started, and, in terms of some of the disruptions in terms of, just our regular way of work, I think the core issue here at hand is always, training and awareness. And, for us, we've always been pushing that from as far as 2008 in terms of where we're headed as a, as a world, not just a country, but as a world in terms of, digital revolution. Before we had the industrial revolution, now we're more in the fourth industrial revolution in terms of, Internet of Things, automation, robotics, all of those. And at the core of it is always our ability to upskill, reskill our workforce. Where the pandemic took us, we're in a position where we had to adapt, right? We can't mingle anymore, we can't go outdoors, we can't go to work. A lot of the physical activities that we were doing had to change, including work and how we learn. Right? And even entertainment, virtual festivals and so forth. And what we saw in the short term was a quick adjustment to learning some of the basic tools that we should have learned before, to be honest, like Zoom and Google Meet and those platforms. And now that the pandemic is over, we're slowly going back to our regular way of work. But one of the underlying factors for that is we really didn't invest as much as we should in digital education, right? Not just in the work world, but in schools, even for our teachers, right? It's not just jumping in front of Zoom and Google Meet and so forth. It's the CRM tools that we use. It's the automation. It's how we replace some of the things that we do in person, physically, in an office, to now doing, in a digital space where certain autoresponder, certain invoicing mechanism, a lot of these different things that would happen that would take someone in an office moving the paper to one department to another to know that being moved electronically through different methods. So where we are now, is we're at a crossroads where we need to tap into the gains that we had during COVID, right? And that is how we're going to improve on productivity in digital. So with digital education, what we focus on is everything pretty much. Artificial intelligence, robotics, just as basic to as email marketing, right? Just as simple as that. We go from the very basic to the most advanced digital marketing, social media. We're big on digital transformation because it's not just in terms of our companies here in Jamaica, but our workforce. We heard about the per capita GDP at 5,000 US dollars, and to be honest, improving that significantly or at a more exponential rate will not just come from tapping into our local economy, but how do we upskill our current task force to tap into the global economy to earn hard currency.
Absolutely.
Right? And that is going to come from the type of education that we deliver going forward. Right? Obviously, we're not going to ignore the fundamental ones, that will always be important. But how do we now, say, get an individual here in Jamaica to learn a certain course in AI or AI is blowing up.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, sorry.
That's correct.
It's blowing up. There are human beings behind that technology. Of course, it didn't come out of anywhere. So how do we teach people to write for these things and so forth, and to tap into global jobs with the Googles, the Facebook, the Apple, and so forth, and earn right here, not through a call center alone or a BPO, but directly with these organizations, being that we're in a digital world. You see, the minute we begin to pull back from being digital first in terms of our thinking to now going back to the norm, we're robbing the next generation of tapping into the big income earning opportunities. Thank you. So that's really my focus and encouragement that I want us to look at.
And we're going to come back a little bit to talk a little bit about digital education and how we can really make meaningful impact on how our children learn, because the rules of the game have completely changed. One of the things that I would want to put it to you, let's say you were a teacher, in your late 30s, you would have gone to school and you would have learned. You would have gone and gotten your teaching degree, and you would have obviously learned teaching in a certain way and methodology. The challenge that we have is we have a lot of our educators that would need some upskilling in terms of how to actually effectively teach our children online. Because teaching in a classroom it's not easy. First of all, teaching is not easy, full stop. But how do you engage and keep your children interested in what is going on? Because let me tell you, this hybrid methodology that we're in right now is here to stay. Because from time to time, we will have to have our children learn from home. And it's this new paradigm that makes us think a little bit more about industrial relations and a little bit more about our labor capital and our human capital. And I think it's a good segue for us to probably pivot a little bit to you, Gillian, to tell us a little bit about what should we expect in this new industrial relations paradigm. Are we ready for it?
I like the question. And I'm going to start by saying that today we're experiencing that change, literally. We are in a place of work, not a workplace, but a place of work that is here in Kingston, Jamaica, but we're working globally today. We are all working globally. The entire world has access to what we are doing. Every single organization in Jamaica, whether it be micro, small, medium, large, multinational, needs to get into the mindset, the frame of business that recognizes that we stay local, work global. Every product, whether it be a good or a service, has to be of global quality and prepared for the globe. If you are not in that business, you are not in business. And digitization is the single most important resource that will take us to that place. It therefore means that we have to look backwards and reach forward. When I say look backwards, the way we prepare our labor market doesn't start at the secondary or tertiary education, but it actually starts from that formative development. The children have to be wired to understand what is the proper use of technology. So what I'm saying is, we can buy as many computers as we want, we can have as much access, but if we're not using it in a smarter way, as a country, we will never move forward. So therefore, it means that from early childhood education, primary straight through to tertiary, we need to have a culture that embraces the use of technology. So, we are not in a world by ourselves called Jamaica. We are competing with every single country that's named today, and those unnamed. Most of the developed countries, have started with their little children, understanding how in primary, elementary education, they make marketing plans, they make PowerPoint presentations. They're not using exercise books and pencils or pens. They are doing that real world conversion, making sure that when these persons are finished education, they are ready for the work world. The plug and play conversion needs to be happening. So it starts with our education sector. It goes through to curriculum, yes, but I'm making a quick conversion to the workplace. You have a set of current workers. We are having some of these discussions at a strategic level.
Yeah.
We need to break it down so that the average Joe and Jane understands exactly what it means for them. How do they contribute? How do they make that conversion?
And I think that's a really good point. And PS actually set us off on a great trajectory this morning when she spoke categorically about bringing productivity to the small man. And I think that is something, you know, we're all here on this panel. We could actually take this discussion times 10 in terms of the intellectual notion of it. But here's my question.
Reese, if I could just say one more thing.
I was going to ask you specifically to talk to the small man.
If
no, I think
I
you're
could
going
make
to do that.
one other statement, and it will be that if you are in business, if you are working in a business, whether it is micro, small, whatever is the size, and you're not able to fit into any of these two devices I have in my hand, you're not in business. So you have to flex, bend up, fit in there, because this is how the globe will be purchasing your goods or your services. This is how the world will be interacting. We spoke about the future of work as if it's a distant phenomenon. Over the 2016 coming up to 2019, just ahead of the pandemic. Oh, it was so far away. All of a sudden, even the jerk man on the street, you can WhatsApp and you can place your order.
Breast
you
and wing or leg and tie.
Right.
Yeah.
Breast and wing, leg and tie. 2 festivals.
That's right.
If you are not there, if you do not get rid of this square footage, these large buildings, ACs, and get into this, that this doesn't require an AC. It doesn't require much. If you're not in here, you're not in business.
Thank you very much, Gillian. And I love the message that you've sent to the common man. And I'll look out for a text. I'm sure he'll be telling me that he got it. He or she, I should say. But there's just one common thread that has come up, and I just want to probably just put it back on the table. We have to think about Jamaica, and you've given us a challenge here, Gillian. You've said, stop thinking of your business as just for the island of Jamaica, but think of yourself as a global business, so to speak. And let's look at a couple of facts that we all know. We are the largest English-speaking country in the Caribbean. That's hands down, right? 2, Jamaicans have the ability to code switch between the English language and other languages. And we also have the ability to amend our accent as needs be.
Wow.
If we were to take some of this energy and fuel it into building up our entrepreneurs and our small businesses, where they would be focused on expanding and looking at productivity and the labor force, not just in terms of I'm just serving this one person here, but I'm serving the globe, I think we'll definitely be able to move the needle on productivity. And one of the things I want to also probably bring us back to is looking at and thinking about the gains that we have made as a society during COVID. We've lost a lot in COVID. Like, let's not even pretend we've lost a lot. But we've gained a lot in the sense that a lot of organizations have been functioning in a manner that they never saw fit. Sorry, they never saw possible before. And that makes us think now, looking at the last 2 years, have we seen some erosion in our digital capabilities over the last, let's say, 3 months? And I'm going to start off with you, Therese, to ask you to give us your quick views on that, and we'll quickly go to Stephen thereafter.
Sure, thanks. I can give one example. So I had the privilege of going to PICA, which is Jamaica's most efficient public agency, to apply for a passport for my daughter. And I didn't know what to expect, but I heard how efficient PICA was, and I was really excited to go there. So we pulled up, and we were given a number by a security agent outside the office. We were ushered into the room. We sat for about 4 hours to get to the counter.
4.1.
4.1, all four. And then we were asked to produce photocopies.
Yeah.
Okay, so photocopies. Now, in 2022, in a world of digitization, we all heard about it, every single government person who is interacting with the public should have a scanner.
Yeah.
You should not be asking me to bring a photocopy. First of all, where's all that paper going? Second of all, it's not sustainable for the environment. And third of all, it's ripe for data privacy breaches, which Jamaicans seem to care a lot about right now.
Yeah.
So I'm saying it seems like a very simple thing, but think about it. Why are you asking the public to make photocopies of their documents to be put into a filing cabinet in a ministry or in a whatever to get a transaction done? In defense of PICA, we were able to get the passport within 24 hours. That's fantastic service, and I commend what they're doing. But I think it's a good example of working in a bit of a hybrid world. So things can be done electronically very efficiently, but there are parts of the process that is still putting us in the 1970s, 1980s. This brings me to a very important subject that I care a lot about in Jamaica, which is the national identification system. So the 4.1 hours I mentioned earlier that a Jamaican spends, a lot of that time is spent proving who you are, right? So Reese has to go with a JP stamped passport photos and a letter from a JP or from his lawyer or from his doctor to say, I'm Reese Campbell.
Yeah.
He has to do that at the tax office. He has to do that at the Ministry of Health. He has to do that at the Ministry of Education. Everywhere he goes, he needs to take all those credentials with him. The beauty of the National Identification System, which I hope Floyd Green is successful in implementing this year with the pilot, but also that every Jamaican would grab at it, is that you will offer up your demographic information to the authorities once in your life. So you can move from tax, you can move to health, you can move to other parts of the system, including in a bank, without having to take all of this documentation with you.
So what's the impact that will have on productivity?
The impact on productivity, well, imagine you reduce that 4 hours in line at the passport office or at the tax office.
Yeah.
You can process your financial transaction in a bank much quicker. By the way, it takes about 8 hours to open a bank account in the Caribbean. Sitting there, and the officer is going to ask you over and over and over who you are,
Right.
because they need to authenticate who you are, and they need to make sure that Reese is not somebody else. That's because we don't have a digital way of identifying our citizens. By the way, it's happening in Barbados, it's happening in Jamaica, it's in the Bahamas, It's starting to happen in Jamaica. It's really important. Estonia, a country that I love to reference in Jamaica, did this in the early 2000s. It is the most efficient country in Europe. Its GDP is growing faster than most countries around the world. And it is because it has found a way to build every aspect of its life on a digital platform. That's the vision I would like to see realized in Jamaica, because I think, first of all, the Jamaican public deserves better. The Jamaican public does not deserve to sit for 4 hours in an office to get a transaction done and to be told, oh, where are the photocopies? That's not customer-centric service delivery. And I'm sure if you went into Flow office, and I'm hoping I'm not mashing my friend's corn here, but I'm hoping that Flow and other private sector operators don't do the same thing. But we're not there yet, and I want to say the public really needs to rally behind the NIDS.
Yep.
Data privacy, you have the legislation in effect now. It shouldn't be a bother, because you know what? Right now, your data is sitting in all kinds of files over this country in cabinets that anybody can access in a moment.
Yeah.
And probably for a fee, they can find out where you live and what your bank account number is. That's not really the issue. The issue is to really bring Jamaica to a much higher level, starting with a digital ID, a digital signature, financial transactions, and it will pave the way for a superhighway of new innovations and technologies, not just in education, but think about the creative industries, what can be done. Think about the health sector, think about telemedicine, think about the pandemic, what we went through. Not being able to go to a doctor can see you on Zoom, but where are your records, right? All of that should be done electronically. You deserve it, everybody in this country deserves it, this whole region deserves to be put on this platform, and we really need to start with a mindset change, which is, no, I'm not going to stand in line for 4 hours to get something done with the government. I'm not going to do that.
Right, and you shouldn't have to have links. That's another part of our
You shouldn't have to have
country.
links. And by the way, 20% of Caribbean people bribe public officials for access to a driver's license, a police record, or something.
Yep.
It's a fact.
So, Stephen, Tyrone, I see you both itching to get something in. I'll just ask you quickly to make your point there, Stephen. So
no, I mean, I was just really, I brought up this issue that Terry just raised on digital signatures. In this day and age, we don't have digital signature legislation in place in this country, right? It's something that's essential for us to do business with one another, you know? EKYC, right? NIDS will bring us down that path, we believe.
Electronic Know Your Customer.
Electronic Know Your Customer.
That's correct.
It's going to be important for us to make business much easier for people in Jamaica. I think the only one point I wanted to raise right now, Reese, was around, and when I heard the discussion just about industrial relations,
right.
I think one of the places that we stepped back just a little bit, and I know my union people will probably cuss me right now, but I think we stepped back a little in the industrial relations climate. I think we had an opportunity during the pandemic to challenge organizations from our union basis to change the paradigm for our employees in this country, to fight for the things such as education of our employees, not just for salaries, not just for benefits. You have to change how organizations also treat with your constituent groups. That's something extremely important. I love unions. I have a great relationship with them. But it can't be only for salaries. You have to chart that educational path for retooling so that their jobs remain relevant.
Right.
Looking at the job descriptions in organizations and saying, boy, this one going to be obsolete in another 4 or 5 years. How do we change that role into something better for the future that will help that organization become even more efficient? You know, so that's some of the things that we have to look into.
And as we talk about upskilling and digital education, Tyrone, you have some thoughts you wanted to share? Okay. Your mic seems to be having some digital challenges there. Ah, it's working now. Let's hear it.
Extra loud now.
Oh no, it still has the same challenge here. So let's use this one.
All right, let me turn it on.
No, I actually wasn't itching to speak. I was
Okay.
just, like
You're
everybody
engaged.
else, I was just engaged.
Ah, okay, all right, no problem.
But definitely with the needs,
Yeah.
I was just added to a workforce or a task force by the Honorable Prime Minister looking around,
Right.
digital transformation and so forth, and I got the kind of first-hand view of needs and what it can do for productivity. So I would just like to add my kind of support in
2
terms
cents
of
to
us
that.
being behind it, because we see where it can help. I think more so tapping into the global economy, not just here in Jamaica, but we have a unique opportunity here as a country to retool a huge portion of our workforce to work globally,
Yeah.
right? In a more organized space. And it will come down to, our ability, the simple identification, just global standards around who you are and your bank account and your this and your that. Sometimes having to have a bank account in the US or in another country and to utilize certain software and so forth, and to be able to, verify who you are.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
and just pretty much like to echo that sentiment in terms of, a lot of people. There's a lot of public sentiment around what needs is and this and that and so forth. But the simple 4 hours at Pico could be half an hour. Utilizing
Digital and technology.
technology like
Yeah.
that. And in the COVID environment, for example, over the last 2 years, the difficult part of doing business was actually having to print a document and sign and deliver physically to
Yeah.
another office when you're probably even outside of the country. Because of COVID, you're trapped elsewhere, or whatever reason, you decide to go to visit mom or dad, and you just can't get any business done. So in order for us to really move forward in terms of productivity, the legislations are critical. But I think the biggest thing outside of all of that is awareness. And when I say awareness, in order for us to move our economy forward and our country forward in terms of digital and understanding digital, is a hesitance among citizens, right? If they are not on board, digital transformation begins with people,
Yeah.
right? If they are not on board,
Yes.
then you're not going anywhere.
Right,
If they are still keen on going into the bank to withdraw funds,
That's a
then no
challenge.
matter what NCB, Scotia, Sagic, or any of those guys do, then digital transformation will not succeed. So on the biggest part, and I challenge government and private sector companies, is to build digital awareness skills. I mean, I see Flo do a lot of that. Flo would like some of that money too, of course, with iCreate.
I think it's a good segue for us to go to you, Tamar. Tamar, we have to wrap up now. We've spoken a lot about productivity, efficiency today. I know that the JPC has been doing a lot of work, and maybe Jamaicans, the man on the street, does not necessarily know. Could you tell us what it is the Jamaica Productivity Center can do or has been doing to really raise the banner of productivity as a part of our wrap-up activity for this panel discussion?
Thank you, Reese. Well, as mentioned earlier, a number of things that we have been doing is really trying to get the message out about productivity and what it means for us and how we can employ these skills, tools, and techniques to enhance our own productivity as individuals, and how that translates to our organizations and as well as the industries in our economy. Because when we look at the whole matter of productivity, you can't forget the human factor, right? People are at the core of everything that we do, and so we have to reach the people. And a big part of productivity, we hear the economic definitions and the mathematical definitions, but there's also a mindset and behavior change that is important for productivity. That culture is necessary, and everybody needs to be on board and on that same page. And what we're trying to do is to get the message out in different forms, methods, so that it appeals to everybody, the persons understand it and can be a part of that movement, because we really need that collective force for it to really work. It can't just be.
It can't just be one person.
It can't just be one person, and we can't be pulling in different directions.
Yes.
As we have seen from the examples that have been shared earlier, that if you have one government agency being efficient and the others are not,
right,
we still have a problem.
We do, yeah.
Right? So everybody has to be on the same page, being efficient, working at improving efficiencies right across the board for it to have that impact. Because I think there were labor talks on the North Coast that the ministry held, and the hoteliers shared the pains to onboard persons. First of all, it's difficult to find employees, and then when they do find them, to get the checks done, police checks, health checks, and to get all of those things, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, because you need a police record, you need a food handler's permit, you'd need all from 3 different agencies, 3 different organizations, 3 different ethoses of time management.
Right.
So it must be quite consuming.
So the more we work on efficiencies and the more how we integrate everything together, that it takes less time to go around. And I know my industrial engineers in the audience, we're not in their heads, because you spoke about continuous improvement, and that's what we need to do, to look at where the gaps are and to continually fix these. So one of the things that the pandemic has done is that when a disruption hits, it shows your weak area. It shows where your weakest link is. And the thing that we don't want to do is to not pay attention to that weak area and jump over it and do other things. Another thing in the pandemic, and it can be likened to, for example, being thrown in a pool and you have to survive, and you keep above water, right? You tread the water and you get to shore, but your technique probably wasn't the best, but you survived. So now that the pandemic is over, you can probably go to do some lessons, to improve on that skill. So you swim more efficiently. So you take less breaths, you have longer strokes, you reach to the shore faster. It doesn't mean that you have to give up swimming totally, right? Or go back to, where you were. But how can we improve on what we have learned over the period to continue to grow, to continue to improve, and to move the needle forward? So I want to implore everyone listening in to really, tap into the resources that we have on hand, the people, the very creative mindset. We're at a time in the world where we have so many different generations in the workforce. That we can look at the strengths of each and pull that together, instead of looking at the weaknesses that exist, and to build not only entrepreneurs but intrapreneurs within our companies, utilizing that entrepreneurial mindset to give them tasks to encourage the curiosity that will lead to the creativity and the innovation that can really boost our profitability and productivity. So I will leave at that, because we know we have a lot
very
more
much,
to do.
CTD. I think we are at 4:30 and we need to have a quick wrap up. And just before we wrap up, there are 2 things that I probably want to mention, right? The first thing is a quote from Gary Keller. Productivity isn't about being a workhorse, keeping busy, or burning the midnight oil. It's about priorities, planning, and fiercely protecting your time. And I think that has been a common thread throughout all of our discussions today. Whenever you're going into a meeting or an activity, is this the best use of my management time, of my hard-earned, skilled resources? Am I using my time productively? And that brings us to also question ourselves about the National Productivity Policy, which is in the making. And I know my chairman, Tony Hyde, is going to be very active in getting that, operationalizing that, because he's a no-nonsense chairman, right? And one of the things that we are expecting and looking forward to is that we will be able to really take productivity to every single person who has an interest and a common man on the street. Now, the last thing I just want to say before we wrap up is our subcommittee of the Jamaica Productivity Center has been working very tirelessly on this. I just want to acknowledge two members here, David Nation and Renee Mayer, who were very instrumental in putting together some of our activities today. Thank you very much. And of course, from the Jamaica Productivity Center, we have Jonathan Isaacs, who was very involved in getting and operationalizing what we're doing today. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I have tried to be as productive and efficient as possible. And as your chief air traffic controller and your chief productivity officer, I want to say thank you very much for tuning into our panel discussion. As I said, the six of us could probably continue for the rest of the evening, but that may not be the best and most productive use of our time and efforts here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much, and I turn over to you now, Dervon. I hope you're behind me. I can't see you, but you should be there, or you should be nearby. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reese. And to our panelists, another round of applause, please. And after listening to all that discussion and ideation, there's a quotation I learned some time ago, which I like very much. Never look back with regret, nor look forward with fear. Look around you with awareness. So we can't change what happened yesterday and years, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, 40 years ago. And let us not be so timid and fearful of what lies ahead. Let's look around us. What can we do right now? What do we need to do right now? And take it on head on. So, having said that, you've been very attentive and very engaged, and we want to reward you with some entertainment. Do you think you can manage that? I am shocked. I thought I would hear some shouts and some screams for the entertainment. Just a reminder, please complete that short productivity perception survey. Where's the tablet? No, I think it's more than one, two, three tablets. And we're inviting you to complete the short productivity perception survey. And, well, you can't win the prize again before 3:30 because 3:30 went already. So, but at least you would have helped us to have a better idea of the productivity perception out there. And so we are going to invite to entertain us at this time, and this is just ahead of the Innovation Competition Awards. That's coming up right after a bit of entertainment, and we invite Karim Chang to serenade this very engaging and participative audience.
Yes. Thank you. It's always a beautiful thing when they pronounce my first name correctly. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karim Chang, and I will be singing a song for you, and I hope that you are inspired as we are focusing on productivity today.
unit at the Jamaica Productivity Center, Mr. Colin Turner, to help us in that regard.
Very good finalists last year. And these three finalists, just giving you them in the order that they had won. The first place winner had put forward an item on Simodon. And Damian Graham. The third place winner, improving the productivity of Jamaica's small agro-processors by natural fibers. At this time, I'm going to invite to receive a basket from the Jamaica Productivity Center, Mr. Cargill,
I'm going to ask Miss Raquel Ellis to present that award to Mr. Cargill. And the winning team, we should have Miss Robinson or Mr. Andre Humble. Well, I'm not going to give them in a specific order, but I'm just calling the first one finalist number one. So finalist number one is Amber Innovation. I'm going to ask you to put your hands together. Among us, and his team would have done a fantastic job with that. Well, let me just give you a quick background on the Amber Innovation Project. So in support of the government's effort to fight COVID-19 second innovator on the list, so it's the second of two finalists. The second finalist is Black Ink Images and Signs Limited. Ms. Maxine Miller, CEO of the Grace Kennedy for the sponsored spectator-free champs. Now, based on the assessment from our panel of adjudicators, not me, Black Ink Images and Signs Limited is the winner of our business competition. The year. At this point in time, I'm going to ask the sponsors, I'm going to ask the team to come forward. I'm going to ask Ms. Maxine Miller in particular, CEO for Black Ink Images and Signs Limited.
team who are the real stars behind this. They adjusted their work time. In their respective projects soon. We casted
Thank you, Black Ink Images and Science Limited.
Some of the jobs that are now available. Celebrate World Productivity Day. The Jamaica Productivity Center does productivity assessments. That's another reminder for you. And they also offer tailored productivity workshops. For questions and information, please reach out to the JPC by email jpc@mlss.gov.jm. That's jpc@mlss. Chief Technical Director of the Jamaica Productivity Center, organizers of this World Productivity Day Forum, to give closing remarks. Let's welcome Mrs. Nelson.
and seeing here some of our productivity ambassadors. We have Miss Lorna Phillips that's here, and one that gave such a beautiful prayer earlier. Thank you, Sir Bennett. And I saw Nicole McCarran Campbell a little earlier, but I think she has left. We want to thank you as well. And to you, our specially invited guests, our and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, our PR team there, who have close. Here to hand over sponsorship this year. So we're seeing paying forward. And that's what we want to do, to continue to motivate. A very creative team with the minds of Ms. and Davey. I want to recognize all of you. For those who were innovative over the period, even if you didn't win a prize today, may you continue to engage in innovative and progressive thinking that will push our nation towards upward growth and continued productivity. We thank all the entrants for making the competition a success. Thanks to the experts who graciously offered their time to judge the competition. We are also immensely grateful. And of course, we want to thank the Turnover Hotel for hosting us here today, keeping us safe and creating sustainable productivity growth, which is a prelude to economic growth. invite you to work alongside us as we carve out new paths and continue to advance. Research and other organizations that are seeking to enhance productivity. We invite you to reach out to us for all your productivity consultations, assessment, audits, and even customized workshops. But more importantly, we want you to partner with us as we create that movement, that revolution towards productivity growth and improvement. To the CEO of Goal Accelerator and a proud productivity ambassador, to see how we can collaborate to enhance the productivity of those who are working from home, so the entrepreneurs who are working from home. So listen out more for that. And with the University of Technology, we'll continue our 6+ year partnership and looking forward to forging even new partnerships with the
us to do is to thank Tamar Nelson for thanking. You to repair to the right for refreshments. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Take care. Thank you. Oh, he's back. Look at the walk. Karim Chang is ready to go again. Take it away, Karim.
Well, yeah. Well, they tell me of a pie up in the sky, waiting for me when I die. But between the day you're born and when you die, They never seem to hear even your cry. So as sure as the sun will shine. They have got the better one. Say forgive them, Lord, they know not what they've done. Cause as sure as the sun will shine, I'm gonna get my share now of what's mine. You can. And then the harder they come, but the harder they fall. One and all. Oh, 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 the harder they come. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful rest of the day.